So I'm going to be interpreting the style, and this is Michelle Obama. And if you look at the neckline properly, the design here is the main thing we want to do, and it's asymmetrical, meaning that it cuts across the center front some way. And so I decided to trace the full front because that is what we need. So you need to get your bodies, and you need to identify your center front area. So this is the center front right here, and I'll just mark it with dotted lines so that you see it. And so our dart comes from here, which is this and this. And so looking at this, you can tell that there's an obstruction and we need to move that dart or those darts. So the next thing to do will be to move the darts and close up the shoulder darts that are existing. So close off your center front and try to squeeze out your darts. So I'm going to pick the first leg, and I'm picking the two together at a go. I'm just trying to save time instead of doing it one by one. And I'm going to crease it all the way to my previous point. And I'm going to come down here. So I'll be moving it to my underarm. And right here, I'm going to measure like 6 centimeters down the armhole. That's just a guide. There's no strict rule to that. And I'll be moving the dart to that point. So I connected that with a line to my traverse point, and I'm just going to snip on it. And so now I'm going to open up this one. And then close permanently with my sticky tape. So this is what I have here for this side. And I'm going to do the same thing on here. Okay, so now we've taken care of the dart, and we can freely walk around the neckline area. So let's consider the shoulder area to the NP, which is the neck point, meaning from here where the sleeve joined to the NP, and let's see what was done there. So to the left here, it would seem I can see something about 1 inch, 1.5 inches from the SP inwards. On this side, it looks like it's slightly a bit more. You can decide to make yours more, or you can decide to just do the same thing on both sides. So let's get started on the left one. So I'm going to use about 1 inch into that, and I'm going to mark it down towards the armhole area. So here is what I am going to do. Mark here 1 inch. Mark down, I think I'll just mark down about 11. And I'm going to decide on what part of my neckline is going to stop. And right here is my neck. So I'm just going to pick the places, going beyond the center front, which is here. So I'll go beyond the center front by about 1 inch or whatever it is that we want. And I'm going to connect to that point there. So now this looks somewhat like a curve, but you can keep it straight, you can keep it curved, whatever works for you. If you're going to make a curve, then you need to get your curve ruler, and you need to slightly curve this one this way. So we finish this part here, and we are left with this part. So on this part here, you need to identify how low you want this opening to start from. And we're simply going to connect it back to where we started here and to the shoulder. So I'm going to be working with my chest line, which is this line here. And so from my chest line, I'm going to connect to this point here to finish up this part. So one thing again, if you notice, this is coming right from the center front. So I'm going to be starting on the center front line. So that just goes this way. And so it's left for us to decide on the width of this other shoulder. So I'll make this look as close to this as possible. So I'm going to make it more than an inch. So I'll probably do like 2 inches or 2.5 inches from the SP inwards. So right here is 2 inches. And so from here, I am going to connect to that point to finish off that part. And so far, this is what we have. So now the next thing to consider is this tiny rope here. So we need to make sure that we have the length that goes from here to the shoulder so that we can just slot it into the back. And so this is what you do. So let's consider this part here. You can decide to just chalk it out and then we attach back. It looks like you could just get like a nice fancy rope and just sew back into the seam line coming from here, and then tucking into the shoulder coming from the back. But you need to know the length so that you don't have it longer than necessary. So we are going to measure the distance that we have from here to here and take a note of it. So right here, put your tape on a stand following the curve, and let's just try to take a mental note of what we have. And here I have about 9 cm, so I'm going to note it. And the next thing will be to cut off all the lines that we don't need on this pattern. So I'm going to be cutting here and here. So I have cut off this part here to this point, and I'm going to separate this as well. So I will flip this all the way around. And I'm going to cut this first because that is so important to us. As tiny as it is, it remains an important part of our pattern piece. And I'm also going to write, so if I put it down this way, this is my N, P. So I'm just going to write N on it just so that I know that that is the part that we're working with. But really, since it's just a rope, that might not be so necessary. And this other part here is going out completely. So far so good. This is what we have. And you also have this bit here going towards the back. Now, so we need to worry about the back, but the next thing we need to do before we move on to the back is consider if there can be an exposure on this part here. So right here we have 2 parts that have openings. This has an opening. I won't consider this opening too low, so I won't bother myself with it. But I think this is low, so because it's almost going towards your chest. So we're going to have to tighten this place so that it doesn't gain. Okay, so I need you to come towards this line here. and try to find the middle, or slightly more than the halfway from. If this is the halfway, try to come up by maybe 1 centimeter, just somewhere in between here that could gape, and mark about, first of all, you can do dotted lines around that your true bust, and mark about quarter on both sides. And so what I'm going to do is just to close it off as a dot and move it into the dot here. So I'm just going to pinch that part off. And I'm moving it further into that arm all over there. So that becomes permanently closed again. And you see, it's going to distort a bit. So we're going to tidy up that distortion and just blend back nicely. So I have secured that part with another paper under, and I'm just going to start from right here, this edge here, and just try to blend to wherever it connects to this line. It doesn't have to go all the way here, just to redefine that shape. And then we cut off. So here is the finished version of the front, complete version of it, and this piece should be just fine now, and this as well. So now we work on the back, and because the back has two different shoulder sizes, we might have to use two backs as well. Okay, so join your back the way I have done it now. So what I did was traced out two of my back pieces, one on the left, one on the right, and then I made at the SP and made the SPs touching each other here and here, since we cut off the bulk of this part. So starting from here, I need you to mark out the space you want the back to be, and I want it to align with this part, and maybe how low you want this to be as well. So I'll just mark this point as my point. You can do whatever you want, and we're going to connect that way. So get your curve ruler, get whatever shape you want from that point there and connect back. So I'm going to be using a marker just so you see what I have done. I have not taken it too low. I have just started my connection from here and gone all the way there. So I am going to snip that off. And right here is my zip. So you need to add the allowance for that. So we are done with this side. And we know that when we're sewing, we're joining the shoulder back to this, and that sorts that. So now let's consider this part, and that's the part that has this tiny bit here that goes back into this point here. So that calls for careful planning. So now let's finish the other side. Now the bulk of the back really can take different shapes and designs, so it's pretty much up to you since we don't have the back picture here. But to finish up the other side, I want to make sure that my zip meets on the same level, both here and here. So here we have used 6 centimeters. That is what we cut off on the zip area on the other side of the back. So I'm going to measure that here and try to make sure that I have the same 6. Now I am thinking we should maintain this entire shoulder here and just slot this into this bit here and sandwich it with the lining. So what that means, if I'm following that style line, is that I will just connect from that my zip material to the exact same point where my shoulder starts from here. So I'm keeping that place straight for about 1 cm before connecting, just so that I have a nice, I don't have a sharp edge. And so I will just snip that out. So this is gonna be the finished product. If I take all this out, you have this back here, you have this opening here, you have a complete shoulder here, meaning that you're going to tuck this inside out and then slot this into it. And that's actually the end of the pattern here. Now the lower part is just a straight continuation, so all you need to do is extend your bodice and finish off. And right here is the tricky part, and I believe that we have achieved it. Now this is the finished product, but I want to call your attention to something. If for any reason you feel this is really low and you think it will gape, then you need to tighten up 1/4 and 1/4 here as well, and fold off and move it into the dart here. So looking at this, you can see that tiny bit there, and I want to get rid of that right now instead of finishing the garment. So I'm going to close that off that way and move it into the armhole. Having said that, this is paper and this is mannequin as well, not a real human being, but then it's better to be safe than sorry, and this will not cost you so much trouble to do in the beginning than trying to figure it out at the end. So that's that.